Hey everybody, welcome back to Northernlion Plays the Binding of Isaac AFTERBIRTH Plus. I told you we'd do a Forgotten Run. We're going to do a Forgotten Run. We got to get back on the horse. Deep breaths, better plays, strong hearts, clear eyes. JD9N PVOB. I'm ready, dude. Anyway, so all I'm saying is that if you, like, literally I'm recording this a minute after the last episode ended. If you like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, if you're not into yoga, if you have half a brain. I was gonna talk about being in an express line and how more of the world should be catering to people who don't cause problems in bureaucratic establishments, but I've decided it's kind of a bad look, and I'm gonna take some time to reevaluate my opinions. They're never meant maliciously, but there can be an unseen level of malice there that counteracts the fact that I want to be a very tolerant and accepting person. But all I was going to say as a capstone is that as I've gotten older, I have, oh my lord, I have gotten much softer, you know? I think there's a time in, I can't speak to other people's experiences, but I think there's a time in a lot of young men's life, you know, I grew up in the Lewis Black era, where it was like, I hate everything, and I think that's why, like, so many YouTube channels and Twitch channels around my age are like, you know, I'm the angry, I'm the irate, I'm Mad Billy, you know, this is what we grew up with, and it is, like, it's hard to get over that to some extent, I think. It's hard to change the person you've been for a long time to be a little bit more positive, which is actually the emotion that I embody for the most part. Like, in spite of the, you know, the fact that I don't even know what is going on when I pop the scissors and then also become the soul, but in spite of what you might think, I'm very rarely an unhappy man. I'm a happy dude. Just sometimes I'm like, I wish I was in line behind a doppelganger version of myself. But I've become much more tolerant to it as I've gotten older and realized that, you know, I've had this realization that, like, not that life is fragile. It's like, oh, NL gets bronchitis once. All of a sudden he's like, oh, this mortal coil is a fickle thing indeed. No, it's not like that. It's more like, you know, I've had the blessing, more or less. I had a pretty easy upbringing, a great university collegiate experience, and, you know, I'm lucky that my family has been in great health, but it's not gonna last forever, you know. While I've been in my 20s, my parents have been in their mid-40s to mid-50s, and I'm starting to recognize, you know, signs of aging in them. They're not, again, not elderly, but for the first time, you know, over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, I've been reconciling that, you know, every time I see them, I'm like, man, y'all are getting old. It's a weird feeling to realize that, you know, shouldn't take any visit home for granted, because there will come a time when, you know, the health concerns are going to be more major than just like, I got a cold, you know? So I'm being more sympathetic to people who are going through that in their own lives as well. So I've never been the kind of guy who's like, your dad's sick, whatever, what do you want to put on the docket? I don't want to hear your personal problems. But still, you know, it could be better about stuff like that, no doubt. But then I was going to pivot off of that, and I was going to start talking about that guy in that song. What a terrible personals ad in that song. If you like pina coladas, first off, horrible line. Why on earth are you starting a personals ad with your favorite kind of alcoholic beverage? It's only really a good starting line if you're an alcoholic. And I mean that non-judgmentally. If the thing that's most important to you is the kind of alcoholic beverage that someone else is consuming, then it's a good first line. If you're just an occasional dabbler and imbiber of the alcoholic arts, not a good first line. It's going to give people the wrong impression. If you like getting caught in the rain, just throwing this out there, who likes that? I'm immediately suspicious of people that are like, when it rains, I go outside and I go dancing. And I'm like, that feels like an affectation. It's like you're putting on an air of whimsy to try to be like this Zoe Deschanel sort of situation. You know, I'm innately skeptical of anybody that when it snows, they go outside and stick their tongue out and then spin around in a circle with their arms outstretched. It's like, I get it, you know, if you're like under the age of 15 or you've never seen snow before. But if you live in Halifax, that's where I start to call it into question. Like I said, I'm becoming a lot more sympathetic as I get older. I mean, I think we should definitely take both. Seems like a great opportunity, although this is the exact thing that's gotten me killed a lot recently. If you're not into yoga, extremely bad line for your personal. Why on earth would you define yourself by something that you don't like? That's the third thing you put on your profile. It might as well say, I also want someone hateful. You know? You can't think of 3 things about yourself. Hey, I'm Derek, I like movies, music, and I hate yoga. It says terrible things about your personality. If you have half a brain, this line is also horrible for 2 reasons. One is it's insulting. You know, you're suggesting that you've dated other people and everybody else you've dated is an idiot. If everybody else you've ever dated is an idiot, you're either a terrible person at choosing a prospective partner, or you might just be kind of a dick. If you like making love at midnight, sure, I'll accept it, but simultaneously, who doesn't? You might as well put I like movies. Everybody likes movies except Austin. What is it? You like making love at midnight. Making love at midnight. In the dunes of the Cape. Really, the next line is in the dunes of the Cape? Now that, you know, I'll give you that, but it's a little bit specific. Does this work? It should work. Like, you're telling me if you saw that ad, that seems like something Elon Musk would put in his personal ad, doesn't it? If you like making love at midnight in the dunes of the Cape. I don't know what to say to you, except that I'm so sorry for the things that I've done and choose to be. Literally just left that floor. Now, it was by accident, and I probably should not have dropped the AWAS rune right next to the door, but... Oh, man, I'm in for a couple weeks, well, not a couple weeks. The backlog's not that big yet, because I've had this, you know... nagging throat thing, in case you haven't heard of it. But I'm in for some comments over the last, you know, 5 or 6 episodes, and I deserve them, I'll admit. Just offset your anger at my play right now with my analysis of the song Escape, which is very, very bad. So we got speed down. Everything else is relatively close to what it used to be, though. Here's the thing. Like, we don't really want the scissors. I just thought I could at least sneak in here. Then get out. So we're content to keep rolling with this, I suppose. I mean, you shouldn't lose a run as the Forgotten basically ever. So this is a totally normal situation. Still, although our damage with the soul is actually a lot worse now because we've lost, what is it, Horror Babylon? But, oh, you know, again, Jesus Christ. I just need a little D4 refresher, and the D4 refresher is, if you just live for 6 charges, you're probably going to be fine. Take your life 6 charges at a time. You know... very glad that I'm not in the dating game, you know? Because even though I've critiqued the gentleman's dating profile, or a personal ad, it comes from a simpler time, in, oh, you fool, the song Escape, which I think is just a terrible example of how to express yourself, it might be honest. And I wasn't really part of the dating world for that long, and it was a different time. You know, it was a pre-Tinder and Grindr era. I don't know if things were simpler then or more difficult then. I'm going to be honest with you. The luxury of, you know, being a married man is that I don't have to care. If you're talking to me, oh, things are so much harder these days. Women be shopping. First off, I like your reference. It's from the Nutty Professor 2. I see you're a man of taste. If someone like you can't find love in 2018, I guess things are hard. But secondly, I don't care. That's your journey. That's fine. Keep working on it. But I feel like, you know, for the limited time that I was in the dating pool, there's always like, there's two conflicting banjos, like in Deliverance, right? One is, I want to present myself in such a way that it draws attention to me. You know, you don't want to put up, you know, a boring facade, whether you're doing online, newspaper like it's the 1800s, in person. You know, you want to be like the best version of yourself. You don't want to misrepresent yourself, but you also, like, simultaneously, you know, you don't want to be ignored. And, you know, whenever I hear people talk about themselves, I'm not saying that it's bad, by the way, because I am like this as a human being as well. But, you know, when you ask people about their hobbies, what do they tell you? Number one thing is, like, the genre of music they like and, like, their favorite movies. It's boring. But that's who we are, is like a collection of... this is gonna stink. It's like a collection of interests, right? But you gotta try to gussy it up a little bit more than that. But simultaneously, you know, relationships before the one that I had with my now wife, there was like a certain element, like the first 3 months of like an interaction like that, you're on your best behavior and you're like, I gotta appear to be more interesting than I actually am. And then at some point, you let the facade that you're some kind of like special superhero drop, and you just become yourself. And that's really when things, you know, that's when intimacy steps in. That was always the conflict of dating, is like presenting this version of yourself as like, especially as a guy, because that's all I can really speak to, is like, yeah, I'm spontaneous, I love fun. What do you want to do? I don't know. Do you want to go skydive and then like maybe die? That sounds fun. That's a thing people like. And then like 3 months later being like, what do you want to eat for dinner? And I'm like, Indian. And she's like, nah. And I'm like, Japanese. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, this is my wheelhouse. This is my skydiving. This is who I am. So I feel for you if you're still out there. You know, it's really, I'm resisting the notion, or the pull, I should say, to put like a catchy little cap on it, because I feel like I'm so cynical about like social media these days. Half the things I see that get like 1,000 retweets, I'm like, that's the dumbest fake motivational poster garbage I've ever seen. Like, dating is just a lifelong quest to find somebody to watch Netflix with. Like, that's the thing I think could get like 15,000 retweets, which is why I don't want to say it, because I respect your time and your social clout too much to encourage you to retweet something like that. But, you know, it's true to some extent. I would never pretend to be some kind of like, you know, aficionado. I don't have any tips for you. Again, I've opted out. I'm not worried about it. It's great to be on the other side. Here's the thing, because I was thinking about this the other day, alright? When I was in college, I had friends who were older than me. So I was, you know, 19, they were like 23. And when we met, we were at roughly the same place in our lives. We were in college. So we had the same interests, you know? They were upperclassmen, we were younger classmen. What did they like to do? Work hard, play hard. What did we like to do? Work hard, play hard. Open, please. Then when they graduated, they got full-time jobs. They became, to my 19-year-old self, substantially lamer. Started being like, hey, we can't hang out this weekend. We're going for a hike. And you'd be like, you've changed, man. You used to only care about cool things, like binge drinking, going out for breakfast, and then doing it all over again less than 24 hours later. And me and my friends who were the same age would talk about it, and we would be like, that's such a shame, dude. When you grow up, you just lose that fire. You know, you lose that. It's like that Japan Droid song, you know? Younger Us. Or also Young Hearts Spark Fire. They got a lot of songs about the same stuff. You know, I don't want to worry about dying. I only want to worry about the sunshine girls. That's what they said. Dude, we should have D4'd about 100 years ago. My mistake. I'm brains in a fog right now. Let's do it again. I want transformations ASAP. I see a little brimstone action here. Ooh, that seems terrible, but that's okay. Because we can play as the soul if this doesn't work. Or we could, you know, re-roll ourselves very soon if necessary. But the truth is, now that I've found myself on the other side, and, you know, you are basically my younger friends. And not all of you are younger, but a lot of you are. Not by much, but, you know, maybe by like 3 or 4 years. And that's why when I bring up things like, you know, equity, I probably hear many of you go, ugh, equity. Getting old sucks. No, I mean, yes and no, okay? So, like, first off, I'm not old, thank you very much. I can call myself that, but you can't. But it's not that getting old sucks. It's that getting older is inevitable, and with that comes new interests. You know, new priorities. Is that when you're 19, most people, they got no responsibilities to other people except themselves, maybe their parents, maybe a younger sibling or something like that. You know, it's a lot simpler. Now that I'm older, especially as like, you know, I would never refer to myself as an entrepreneur or a business owner in order to gussy up my own name and be like, I'm a young entrepreneur. You don't understand what it's like out here grinding. It's not like that. It's more like, for tax purposes, I am a business owner. I'm 29. I'm worried about tax. When I was 19. You know what happened when April rolled around? I was like, when do I get my check? When do I get my check? When do I get my check? For being not that old. You know, it was like I had no concerns beyond what was within, like, you know, 50 meters of my own person. And I've gotten older, things have changed. You live a more carefree life. You're focused a lot more on leisure when you're younger. I think most people would agree that that's true. And it might change when you get older as well. You know, my parents, 30s and 40s, they worked their tails off. Now that they're kind of past that threshold, you know, they're not providing for a child anymore, so to speak. You know, they're much more financially stable. They spend a lot more time doing leisure stuff as well, which is great because they, you know, have earned it after working so hard throughout their occupational lives. Oh, we got a gummy transformation. Let's go. But we're also about to die, but we do have 9 lives. I think we should reroll to try to get more HP. We're not going to lose Guppy. This seems cool. There is a thing, and this is what we didn't consider when we were 19. There is a thing that is lamer than your interest changing as you get older, and that's your interest staying the same. And I don't say that to be rude. If you're interested in gymnastics, you get older, stay interested in gymnastics. But if your interests are like, let's go to that kegger down the street, totally fine. I would if you're of the age where that's appropriate, I'm being sincere with you. I would never suggest skipping out on that stuff. That's, as far as I'm concerned, a rite of passage. This is gonna sound, this is the advice your parents don't want to hear, but I'm giving it from a place of good intentions, okay? In college, because sometimes people will be like, do you regret going to college and getting a degree that is now useless for your profession? No, for one, it's like a little check mark that I could always use as a resume if I need to re-enter the workforce. But for two, in college, I learned a lot of soft social skills that have helped me out in my life. You know, when I left high school, I wasn't a weirdo, but I was like kind of a weirdo. Part of it is like I was 17 years old, so, you know, you're young, you're still figuring it out. But then the other part of it was that I was like a little under-socialized. By being in college and taking advantage of social opportunities, I learned much more easily how to interact with people without being strange, and I think that's served me very well. So you learn what they call it in the industry is soft skills. You know what a soft skill is? something, and this is why my current university makes you take classes on how to speak to other people in the office, because obviously they've had enough graduates come out of these computer science programs, and then companies hire them and go, you know, they're great programmers, they can't talk to anybody. They're accidentally rude on occasion. Like, we don't want to do this. They, you know, they talk down to people, and then, you know, when we go get lunch, we have shared plates in the middle, but they're too shy to ever ask for more food, so they eat like 3 French fries, and this all comes from a place of love, okay? I've been there. That's why these soft skills, I think, are important, and sometimes those soft skills are perhaps generated by going to parties where you would maybe drink a little bit too much cheap beer, but then, you know, learn to talk to people from all different walks of life. That's all I'm saying. You can learn these without having to go to those, probably. You know, just clubs or really anything. You gotta put yourself out there is all I'm trying to say. Those soft skills, though, they're important. So I would still recommend it. Go to class as well, though, is the thing. I'm not telling you to, my favorite YouTuber said, blow off class and go to keggers. Worked for him. He's a young entrepreneur. Probably work for me as well. So if you're of the right contemporaneous age, by all means. And even if you're, you know, a little bit older and it's not an all the time sort of thing, make yourself feel young again every once in a while, perhaps. Under doctor supervision. But again, I'm tying it back to the earlier point. There is one thing lamer than your interest becoming perhaps more tame as you get older, and that's your interest staying the same. You know, if you've got friends that are still trapped, trapped is a bit of a judgmental word. If you got friends that are still in that mindset where they're like, it's Friday, let's get hammered every Friday. Well, I mean, if you're one of my university classmates, enjoy it while it lasts, because you got like less than 6 months, you know. I think even at 29, you might be able to get away with that to some extent, but once you get into your 30s, it starts to be kind of a bad look, doesn't it? Once you got friends that are doing like Ironman challenges, and you're like, oh, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I continued my incredibly rigorous training for a 50-kilometer race to raise money to combat cystic fibrosis. What did you do? Jaeger bombs. I wanted to be, we should have taken the other one first, but I wanted to be clear that this is not meant as an admonishment of you. It's if anything, it's a dismissal of my collegiate self, which is very typical, I think, of a lot of people's college experiences, while simultaneously, you know, let me be your trip sitter as you start to get a little bit older, if you're in the same boat that me and my friends were, which is like lamenting, you know, you lose that fire when you get older. I remember I would talk with, and I still feel this way to some extent, but I would talk with my friends in university, you know, late into the night, and we'd be like, man, so sad. People like wake up early 5 days a week, go to work, come home, they hate their job. What do they do when they get home? Watch TV. It was an oversimplified view of adult life. Now, I do want to say, without being judgmental, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's sad. I think that's a very rude way to describe this. What I would say is I think a lot of people out there, if they applied themselves more, could make positive changes to their life, myself included. You know, I'm not innocent of, like, you know, working 100% of the time. You also should not strive to work 100% of the time, probably. But if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not necessarily work. And for this, I'm not speaking about recording Isaac episodes. I'm speaking more about, you know, like exercise or, you know, having a hobby or going to night class or something like that. So I think if you truly hate your job, you know, you have the means to improve where you're at in your life, like you have a lot of free time, for example, you should pursue it, at least for a little while, you know? What do you lose in the end? What do you lose if you're 26 and you're like, I want to be an electrician, but I'm trapped in this, like, clerking job? I don't know, find some night classes, take a couple months off from your job if at all possible. It'll be inconvenient, but, you know, maybe you could make a positive change in your life by applying yourself. learn a program in your downtime. I'm not going to push everybody into computer science because you're just future competition for me when I inevitably transition out of YouTube because I've become irrelevant and am forced to take on a more normal job. So please just stay out of the Vancouver market. But like, if you're interested in that, there's never a better time than right now. But simultaneously, the view that we had when we were younger was very foolish. You know, if you're 40 years old and you go to work and then you come home and you watch TV, that's not really what's happening most of the time, is it? You know, you're waking up early, you're going to work, you're coming home at 5, you got, you know, administrative stuff you need to do, you gotta pay your bills, you gotta, you know, phone the bank, you gotta check in with your parents, if you've got kids or a spouse, you gotta, you know, take care of your kids in particular. You gotta make dinner. Like, there's other things that happen that take up an adult's life. It's not just 2 things. So when I was in school, we only had 2 things. There was school and not school. There were some days, you know, I mean, I had some hard years in school where there was, like, a lot of work. But I also had some semesters where, like, on Friday I had, like, an hour of class. Made up for it with more hours of class throughout the week. But Friday I had 1 hour. What was I doing? Wasn't learning anything important. Instead, I was talking to my friend about how sad it would be if we were 50 years old and all we did was watch TV. Now, socializing is important, but I'm just saying, you know, when we were younger, we had a much more simplistic view of the world. Not we as a generation, just me and my friends specifically, I don't know. Other peer groups might have been having more well-reasoned discussions and been more respectful to their elders in particular. I was a very sheltered child who thought that you know, I had it figured out and everybody else was being an idiot to some extent. I've grown out of it slightly, but it's a common learning experience. At least, or a lifelong learning experience, I should say. At least what I've recognized as I've gotten older is that I should grow out of it. Instead of when I was a teenager thinking it was a virtue and it should be held on to. Well, I was looking for HP, so this is one way to get it. Anyway, that's all I'm trying to say. I don't know if have I said anything of substance over this entire episode. All I'm trying to say is if you're dealing with that unique young person anxiety of I'm not going to be young forever, at some point am I ever going to care about equity and my blood pressure and LDL cholesterol? The answer is, and it's going to flip you on your head, hopefully. Hopefully you do. Because that indicates that you're doing a good job of growing up. The same way how if you were 5 years old and you looked at a 14-year-old that was like, I want to kiss girls, you would have been like, gross, I don't want to ever have that happen. And now you're like, well, I'm just going to go, well, I don't know. I was going to say, if you just go back to caring about Lego, wouldn't that be sad? But maybe it wouldn't be sad. Maybe it would be like an idyllic experience for a lot of people. Either way. And anyway, again, of course, as I always point out, you know, I don't have all the answers. I'm very young. Hopefully I continue to get much, much older than this. We'll see how the throat infection goes. All I'm saying is you'll probably figure it out. All adults are just figuring it out on the fly, you know? You make mistakes. Like I said last episode, or I think it was last episode, the only time I really feel like a great adult is when I'm able to drive without incident in a major city. Because as a kid, even as a teenager, I was like, I would never drive in a major city. And there's many good reasons not to. Environmental, financial, health and safety, etc., etc. But to be able to do it feels good, man. It really does. Luckily, I've run out of content at the exact moment that we finished this run, and that was a clean win. I'm feeling reset, centered, and ready to go. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, click the like button. Helps a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. I will see you next time.